up, folks? You are listening to Too Many Words. I am your host, Jayme Bedingfield. Welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, you rock for clicking it, for clicking the link, clicking my way. All your shares and downloads and awesome reviews help so much. So thanks for having my back. This week I have Lauren Baratz-Logsted on the show talking her brand new release, Zombie Abbey, which is zombies meets early 1900s England and elegance. And this is a really fun book, and I had such a great time talking to Lauren, and I have that conversation coming up for you in a bit. Before I get into book world related news and what I'm reading, I just this week the show goes out to Mo, the office cat. As some of you know who follow my Twitter account, my cat Mo passed away this weekend. And normally he's right here on the desk, being the quiet show supporter. You know, Jake with his snoring steals all the attention and the name dropping, whereas Mo would just, occasionally he'd breathe in the microphone, and I'd have to explain to my guests that it wasn't me that was, doing this heavy breathing. It was my cat Mo. But yes, so this episode goes out to him. I'm gonna miss him. Speaking of Jake and his snoring, there's the first few minutes of this episode, his snore is extra loud and therefore really hard to completely take out because it wasn't registering as background noise. So I appreciate your patience for the first few minutes where he adds his own track to the background, but then I nudge him awake and the snoring of dragon proportions goes away. But yes, so end of March release, The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X.R. Pan is just gorgeous YA with magic and grief. And yes, so that just hit the New York Times bestseller list. I definitely recommend you taking a look at it. The first chapters are where I am right now, but just absolutely gorgeous. I am also reading Breaking the World by Jerry Gordon. This is I have an ARC of this, and it will be coming out April 19th, and I will be talking to Jerry Gordon right after that. So definitely look for it. This is it's enthralling and exciting and dark, and the narrative tone is just, it smacks you in the face in like the good way. So I'd mark your calendars for it, pre-order it. I'm really excited for this book to come out in the world. I love apocalyptic stories, and this one is so unique. So definitely look for the book and look for my talk with Jerry Gordon coming out in the end of April. There's a bit of a schedule change coming up. Starting April 16th, Too Many Words moves to Monday. And so that will change. So new episodes air Monday. And then for Patreon supporters, the Friday beforehand. And then the Patreon exclusive weekly mini episodes will move from Friday to Wednesday. And if all those dates just scrambled in your head like a smoothie, you can go on the site and Twitter to find those date changes. And of course, on patreon.com/too-many-words, all updates are on there. And yes, without any more waiting, let's go to my talk with Lauren. I had so much fun reading Zombie Abbey.
I'm so glad. It is, it's meant to be campy, and humor can be hard, though.
Humor can be hard. I have one of my characters in my current work in progress. It's important that this character is funny, and I realized how not funny I am because I'm like, oh wow, you really need to work on this.
Well, I'm sure that that's not true. One of the problems with comedy is, though, it doesn't always wear well if you once you've read the same joke over and over again. So as a writer, by necessity, we've read them so many times because we're revising and we're tweaking, and we don't hear it the way someone hearing it for the first time might hear it, when it might actually still be genuinely funny.
That's so true. I mean, that's such a huge challenge, being able to separate yourself enough to know, like, is this even good? I get to a point where I don't even know what words I'm reading anymore because I've read them so many times, and I also know what everything looks like inside my head. It can be very disorienting.
When you get to that point, which I consider to be the tunnel vision part of writing, that's when I think it's time to hand it off to a trusted reader who has not read it before, who can look at it with new eyes.
Definitely. Yeah, when you are looking at something, you're reading your work, and it's lost all meaning to you, it is time for another set of eyes. Was the humor in Zombie Abbey, it was a big part of the story. Was that challenging?
Not really. I mean, my first published novel, going back to 2003, was contemporary, but it was a dark comedy called The Thin Pink Line, about a slightly sociopathic Londoner who fakes an entire pregnancy.
Oh, man.
And when you go with something as over the top as that, you're going to have some readers who think it's absolutely hysterical, and other people who think it's junk or scandalous, and they hate it and they want to stomp it into the ground. The one thing you never want if you're writing humor is to be so vanilla that you get like a tepid peck out of people. If you write humor, you're going to be loved, and you're probably going to be hated too.
Interesting. Yeah, so you really have to like commit to the fact that you are trying to get people to laugh, and in order to do that, just like getting people to feel lost or to be scared, you have to hit on certain notes. So yeah.
Right. And I don't think with humor so much it's even that you're trying to get people to laugh, but you're creating situations that you yourself as a writer genuinely find funny. Of course, then to go out and get a wide cross section of human beings who will actually agree on what funny is not that easy to do.
So what brought you to writing a story with zombies and early 1900 period setting?
Like millions, probably tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people all over the world, I love Downton Abbey. And I'm not a zombie person myself by nature, but my husband and my daughter love Walking Dead. And so it's in my consciousness. I'm very aware of zombies. And a couple of years ago, one night, we were watching Downton Abbey, and I was really enjoying myself. And then that crazy creative voice in my head said, you know what this needs? It needs zombies. Zombie Abbey. Zombie Abbey should be a thing. And so, of course, once I thought it, I actually had to set about doing it. And that was to create not an exact replica of Downton Abbey, but that kind of world. A 1920s world where everything is bound by class and everyone's roles are prescribed by their position. And into that, throw this bomb of a zombie apocalypse, so that all these people who never imagined working together in their lives suddenly do have to work together.
I really love that part of it. I mean, so I come from a camp where I love both. Downton Abbey, one of my favorite shows ever. I've rewatched it, multiple times with my husband. I also love zombies, and I really enjoy the setting, because I love that period, aesthetic wise. So to combine that with, the zombies, and then you have the camp there, it's really awesome. It really comes together. So, what would you say was like challenging for you? Like some of those, every book has it, right? Those couple things where you really, need to work on this one thing, or this one thing is got you on the run. What was it for Zombie Abbey?
I think for me it was the zombies. There's certain worlds sometimes as a writer you know better. I know a lot about vampires and vampire fiction. I think I've been reading about vampires on and off for about close to 45 years now, which makes me almost as old as the Crypt Keeper. But zombies was not something that I knew a lot about the specifics. I mean, I've seen a lot of movies. I knew there's fast zombies, there's slow zombies. And then as I started to get into it, I realized, okay, you can take this basic brain-eating thing, and then you can make your own rules for your world about how these zombies work. And once I realized that, it was very liberating for me. Yeah. So, I mean, in my case, without hopefully giving too much away, I decided that rather than fast versus slow zombies, the speed of the zombies would have to be directly related to how long since they had become a zombie.
Oh, I like that. There's not a lot of science that supports zombies. So you have to, there are expectations that come with zombies as with vampires and a lot of beings that we've become familiar with. But yeah, it's interesting to play with, like, okay, what is it? You have these zombies. Like, what does that mean? What do they have that works for them and works against them? Now, and then, so how was integrating, zombies with all the family and employee dynamics that you had in the house?
Well, it's just so much fun. Because you have these characters that they're wearing, the women have these, Chanel dress as a designer, and the colors are these jewels tones, and you have these footmen in these impeccable costumes. Now you've got this incredibly ugly thing going on. And which of these people are going to be the first to instinctively pick up a weapon and start fighting back? That people can surprise you. There's three main sisters involved in a very large cast of characters. You can certainly recognize them as being a bit like the sisters in Downton Abbey. Also recognize the character types from the Brady Bunch, Petticoat Junction, really anything where you have three sisters, there's going to be one part of their personality that's more dominant and something that they need. And I didn't necessarily deliberately set out this way, but a archetypal story in writing is, of course, The Wizard of Oz. So you can think about the three sisters as there's not really a Dorothy in sight, but they kind of are like the Scarecrow and the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion. So you have Lady Kate, the eldest, who's so entitled, and really what she needs is a bit more of a heart. And then you have the middle sister, Grace, who's always trying to do things right and is a little bit more stodgy than the other two, and is maybe suffers a bit from low self-esteem, and she could really use some more courage. And then you have the younger sister, Lizzie, who's a bit of a badass, but she's also been told always, as youngest sometimes are, that you're a little bit silly and you're a little bit frivolous. So she certainly thinks that she needs more of a brain than she has. And hopefully, over the course of their journey, they each get a little bit stronger at what they're weak at.
No, the dynamics of the sisters, it seems that, like, I could just, as a writer, I could just see how fun it was to kind of explore this world and this horror in such a beautiful setting through the sisters.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, I love the sisters, even when they're bitchy or difficult. And I also really like so many of the characters. And I'm sure that, again, this is something that you know as a writer. You start writing a character, like, say, take the Duke, for example, Raymond Allen, with his carroty hair and his Prince Charles-like jug ears, even though, of course, Prince Charles didn't exist yet in 1920. But, he's scared and he's insecure, and he's the kind of person that's you think is going to run away when danger comes. But occasionally things would happen in the book, and I would see him growing, and he'd start doing things, and he'd surprise me, and I think, oh, wow, you can do this too. You're not just this silly person. There's a little bit more there. So
I absolutely love that when that happens, when your characters surprise you, but then you're like, yes, they totally would do that.
And hopefully, if they surprise you, then hopefully occasionally they'll surprise a reader too in good ways. I know there's a lot in the writing communities. Everyone always asks, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? Meaning, of course, are you someone that just flies by the seat of your pants? And I've done them both separately. Sometimes I do them together. With Zombie Abbey, I'd say that was the book where I did it together, where I certainly had some ideas going into it of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish. But then once I created certain of these characters, I let them lead me a bit.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I need to have enough of a map where I know where I'm going and have a good idea who, my major characters are. But I need to allow myself room to find surprise and for the characters to just kind of stumble on things, and I need to leave that room. Otherwise, I get blocked. I get bogged down and I can't see. But you have so many books out. I mean, every book is different. Is there something that you can, point to now and that you wish you could tell yourself as a younger writer? Just learning your process is just such a thing that so many people don't realize until they're in it. And it's so much more than just writing a story. It's learning how you can write that story.
Yeah, gosh, I don't know what I would tell me to do differently, just because I've been fortunate that I've been able to do so many different things. I've had over 30 books published for adults, teens, and children. The only thing I haven't done anything for yet is the baby to 5-year-old crowd. I've dabbled in genres. I've done historical and contemporary and just about everything except for science fiction and Western, I think.
I know, I saw you do huge range.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, if I wanted to advise my younger self on a way to maybe make more money as a writer, maybe I'd say stick with one thing, become a specialist about it, build your brand at that one thing so people know what to expect from you. And, maybe you will be able to be really good at that one thing. But the thing is, Jayme, if I had done that, I don't think for me I'd have had half as much fun as I've.
Well, I tried to control my ideas and it backfired. I mean, it's, and I was talking about this with another writer a couple of weeks ago. Actually, a few. This has been coming up, but ideas aren't thinking about genre. They're not thinking about that. So and I work this way. I feel like a lot of writers work this way, but you have to have enough gut passion to make a whole book. So directing that, I mean, that doesn't, if your mind is going to have all these different ideas and different genres, that's what your mind's going to do. That's what I say to that.
Right. And I mean, I do think that there are people who, through choice or through a compelling argument on someone else's part, take their square peg and they manage to squeeze it into a round hole, and that can become a career. Without naming names of specific authors, I don't know if you saw, but I was an independent bookseller for 11 years before becoming a writer. And there were a lot of different authors that came in our bookstore. So this shouldn't be identifiable, but there was one that was a huge best-selling writer. And when the person would come in, let's just say X, was frequently intoxicated and not necessarily in a hugely joyful fashion. And X certainly had lots of success and lots and lots of money. But I think that X's big sadness was that X enjoyed what X did well enough, but there were these other books that X really wanted to write. And yet there was always an agent or an editor saying, yeah, but come on, this is what you should be doing. I guess that's a little bit of a diversion there. But I guess the short version for me is I'm not X.
I mean, it's such a gut thing. It's so personal. I mean, it goes to the whole thing. If I'm in a stretch of time where I'm not finding time to write, or if I'm not feeling inspired to write, I almost feel sick and I'm restless and, it's no good. So, I mean, I think that goes into ideas and inspiration as well. Being a writer, you also have to fight so much. You have these different voices. And I think, learning what voices are helpful it's an important part of getting things done.
Definitely. And I also, I remember in college learning that, in terms of careers, of course, it's no oversimplification, but they divided it into two kinds of people: security-oriented people, meaning that, you want that paycheck and you want to be sure of that paycheck, preferably that it's a certain size. And then task-oriented people, that it's important that the task itself be something that you love. And I guess that translates into my writing career too, because it's like, well, do I have to love every minute of it? Well, no. I mean, sometimes being a writer is hard work. It's not hard work in the way that, I don't know, laying tar on the highway in Texas in the middle of summer is hard.
Maybe metaphorically, though.
it's relentless, right?
It really is.
And it never stops. But I always also felt that if I'm going to be doing this, I have to love it. I have to be passionate about the things I'm creating. And that doesn't mean they have to be the most, I think that they're the most important books in the world. But if I'm writing Zombie Abbey, it's because I'm passionate about writing that book, because I think it's an entertaining idea, and that I hope that enough readers will too, that I'll be able to jump from the safety of this lily pad of a book to whatever the next one in my career is going to be.
Did you, what kind of research went into the period part of it?
Not as much as you would think. Sprinkled in with the mostly contemporary books that I've written in the past, there have been some historical books.
I noticed that, yeah.
I think the first published one was Vertigo, which was a Victorian suspense novel that takes place in the century from the 1800s into the 1900s. A society wife who she wants to be a better person, and, well, let's just say murder ends up being involved along the way. And I remember at the time, people saying, well, how can you write that? Were you a history major or whatever? It's like, no, but I've spent my time watching British period pieces. Is a huge education. Now with Zombie Abbey specifically, I had a very reasons for I wanted the year that I wanted. I wanted it to be 1920 because there was a certain amount of time had gone by since England had gotten out of, since World War I had ended. And that was just really what worked best for my book in terms of technology and when people might have served in the war. But unlike the 1800s, 1880s, and the turn of the century, which I'm very familiar with, 1920, I mean, yes, the roaring 20s in America, but not so much England. So I did go to the library and got out books on interior design and exterior design and fashion, because those are the kinds of things that I find that I need to fill my head with. Even though I'm not going to use all of it, it helps me immerse myself in a time period, or finding out, well, what would someone in a wealthy house, what would they be eating? They go out on a shoot in the middle of the afternoon to bag some birds, and what would they do with their guests for lunch? So that kind of research.
I get lost in research holes. Do you, I will just click away and away. So I have to set myself little timers. In general, I have to stay in reality with timers. Do you do that at all?
I'd say that the thing that I put my limit on is, yes, I do some research on the internet, but like I said, with this particular one, I took out, I'd say, about 6 or 7 coffee table sized books from the library. And so in a way, going into it already, I know that it's finite. I'm going to look in these, and they are going to get me what I need for the world building of this particular book, and then I will look no further unless there's a specific question. I mean, going into other books I've written and the kinds of things that I might have wanted to know. There's another historical one I did called The Twins' Daughter. That's a personal favorite of mine, about a young girl. It starts out when she's about 12 or 13, and she discovers that her gorgeous, wealthy society mother has an identical twin who was raised in the poorhouse. And she discovers this when that woman in rags knocks on their door. And she answers the door, and there's her mother's face and someone who's dressed entirely different. And there were little details. Like I said, the 1880s are something I'm very familiar with, but occasionally there would be something like I would want to send them out to a play. And so I'd look at the year and I'd be like, oh, Gilbert and Sullivan at the Savoy, 1881. This is what was opening. Well, that's what they're going to see. And so then maybe I also need to look a little bit at the architectural plans for the Savoy to get a feel for the layout. But so I fall down specific holes sometimes, but those are finite. I know I'm going to get back out of them.
It's so much fun. I love that part of it. The compiling of the world and getting all the pieces together, or you're in this chapter or this scene and you realize that there's a little bit more that you need to understand. I love that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then while those details, at least as long as the memory holds, they sort of become part of your consciousness that maybe you take into other work with you.
Oh, definitely. Well, I mean, I feel like my head is filled with all different kinds of facts just from different things that I've looked up for projects. Is there a relationship, without spoilers, that you had the most fun exploring?
Gosh, it really is tough to pick a favorite.
A couple of favorites?
A couple of favorites I can do. I mean, I think that the reader, it's no surprise that from the beginning, there's this dynamic set up between Lady Kate, the oldest sister, and Will Harvey, the a very attractive stable boy, of whom it's been said to see him ride was to envy the horse. So you knew that there was going to be something there. But what I didn't know was that Will and the youngest sister, Lizzie, were also going to have their own special kind of relationship. I had no idea that was coming until that appeared on the page. With the Duke, the jug-eared Duke who we mentioned before, and Fanny the kitchen maid, who are, I think, the two people in the book who are farthest apart in station and who find things to respect in one another. They were a hugely pleasant surprise for me.
You touched on this a little bit with the Duke, that I believe, but as far as other characters needing to do things because of the zombies and everything that's happening, did you have a lot of that where you had to rely on the character and then you ended up just being surprised by what they did?
I was surprised so often. There were people, when I created the footman Daniel, the second footman, as his actually specific title, again, I wanted someone in the household because some of the research I had done on the time period told me that sometimes poor teenage boys who weren't necessarily old enough to fight in the war would lie about their ages, and no one would really check because they were poor. And so at a very young age, they might be going off because they thought, well, I'll see other countries and I'll have an adventure and I'll have square meals that I might not be getting at home. And of course, what they would be getting often was a lot more than that. Danger and death and ugliness. And in the case of Daniel Footman, now that he has survived that, he's back in the house. And even though he's a servant, that's all he ever wants to do. He doesn't want there to be danger anymore. He's seen enough of it. He's seen enough of ugliness. But what does someone with his skills do when the zombies come to call? And so, again, he was someone that I thought, he's a servant. Maybe he'll be some of the wallpaper. And then before you know it, well, maybe he's a bit of a hero too.
Well, and that's where knowing your character's backstory as a writer is really crucial, because that's, some of their past, it makes, in the present where the story takes place, it makes them, like you said, they were in the war. Well, what skills do they bring when there's, zombies trying to eat you?
Right. But again, without giving anything away, Daniel's background does at least give him some ideas. Because, when we watch, I think, contemporary zombie shows, it feels like people catch on pretty quickly that there's something horrible going on. But now we're looking at a time period where Will only some people have phones? Um, you're kind of living this bucolic life in the countryside. And so the first time something happens, it's not like the natural instinct is to say, oh, well, clearly we have a case of the undead on our hands now. What are we going to do about this? I mean, there's going to be people that are going to be terrified right away, but there's other people that are going to be in denial. Some people are going to be in denial for a long time. How do you pull those people along, especially in a society where, there's the stiff upper lip and there's this commitment to, but this is the way our lives have been. We are British. We must do things like this no matter what's going on. I think like what you were alluding to, it all comes down to character, right? Don't they say character is destiny?
Because you have, like the sisters, a life of privilege. They don't have any battle background. They don't have any experience with that sort of thing. So then you also have just like character traits then to pull up, okay, well, this character, she's really, brave. She's brazen. What does that offer to this situation?
And then also to what might someone who maybe isn't as brazen but is more thoughtful, what will that person bring to it?
Exactly. Well, it's just it could be so endless too. Like if you just let yourself go with endless possibilities, you could just go on and on. I mean, that's the fun part, right? Trying to figure out what ideas you get you excited.
Well, yeah. Definitely. And, I don't know that there will be a second book. I hope there will be a second book because near the end of this one, I had a writerly revelation about one or two of the characters where I realized, oh. Well, this book is already where it's supposed to be, so I can't throw that additional Molotov cocktail in here, but I'd love the opportunity to do it someday.
I was going to ask you if there was going to be a second one, because towards the end, my mind started being like, she could keep going with this.
I certainly hope so. In my mind, I have ideas for at least two more. But as with so much in publishing, that really is going to be up to the publisher what they want to do.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to keep my ear and eye out because I hope that there's more. I would read more.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I mean, hopefully, if this is to be the one, hopefully readers will be satisfied that the story that was originally set out to tell in this particular book came to a particular kind of conclusion that I hope they'll find satisfying.
I was definitely satisfied. I can't speak for everybody else, but I thought the ending was very satisfying. And some endings, especially if I'm reading on my Kindle, I don't always know that I'm near the end. It's not like when you're reading a physical book and you can see that there's dwindling pages in your hand. You don't know. So and then there's sometimes there's bonus material or stuff at the end that's accounted for in the percent ticker. So sometimes you get to the end, I'm like, what? That's happened to me with a few books recently where it was a cliffhanger and I also didn't know that the ending was coming. And I loved your ending. And it's definitely a solid standalone. More could come after it too, which is how I like my series anyway. I do like series, but I don't not say I don't like it. I will read it, but I do like when the ending, it concludes the story that's at the core of the book. And then we have the characters and we have similar themes, but we have a new story.
Right. And I kind of think, even though it's a book, in a way, I think of it like a Walking Dead type of series, in that, again, getting back to the word episodic, where you have a certain season arc that you're looking to do. And sometimes, obviously, if your show is very successful, you signed a contract, there is going to be a next year. But lots of times with shows, they don't know what's coming around the corner. And so certainly with zombies, there's so much more that you can do, but at least this particular season is a complete thing.
Definitely. Well, I really liked it. I loved it. And zombies, like I said in the beginning, I'm a big fan of zombies, and to have new take on it, a new setting for them is so nice because they're
kind of the ultimate existential threat, aren't they? Vampires the supernatural creatures. You've got vampires, which are kind of romantic and sexy lots of times. I mean, except for that, like
I would be a vampire. I would sign up for that.
right. Which of us has not seen a vampire movie or read a vampire book and at some point thought to ourselves, I do you. Right? And then you've got, werewolves that they're kind of like big dogs, right? You've got a big dog. You know what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
totally.
I could find a way to love you. We could live side by side somehow, and genies. I don't have a date for it, but I have a teen book coming out later this year called I Dream of Johnny. That's a contemporary revisioning of the I Dream of genie type of thing, but in this case, it's a teenage girl who finds a very hot boy in a bottle.
Oh.
And, topless guy, hot. Genies, hot. Of course they're hot. But zombies, no one wants to do a zombie. No one wants to domesticate a zombie or pet one or live side by side. The one thing that everyone in the world can agree on, we've got to kill it.
Yeah.
We've got to work together and do something so we can survive, so we don't become like that. So I think that that's the great thing they bring to the literary table is that everyone that encounters them, even if they can agree on nothing else, they can agree on that.
That's a good point. Yeah. Kill the zombie. I mean, yeah, kill the zombies. Zombies must die. Zombies and what people, I mean, we're all scared of mortality. So to be attacked by something that's dead but not, I mean...
right. That is certainly a terrifying thing. And I also think that we all, following along on exactly what you said, we all have our ideas of what happens after we die. And some are strongly held beliefs. And for other people, it might simply be speculation. And it might be simply the idea that it's just lights out and our matter disperses in other ways. But whatever it is, we certainly don't want to think it's going to be someone's going to eat our brains and then we're going to be walking around as shriveled things trying to eat other people's brains and living just in torment. I mean, it
complicates
scary too.
It complicates the heck out of grief.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, following along on the idea that zombies bring people together, maybe in our current political climate, without getting into specifics about politics, maybe we could use some zombies, something we could actually all agree on.
Interesting. Although, though, but then at that point, we can all agree that we're going to kill zombies, but then we're all trying to survive, and that's, conflict's going to come from that.
Yeah, you're right. We're probably still pushing each other out of the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's, that's a thing that a lot of, the post-apocalyptic fiction explores is that, okay, society is now pushed to its limits because surviving now is really hard. What do we do to each other now? Mm-hmm. But you do all that with fancy dresses and bow ties. And I like it a lot. It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me that was one of the fun things about the concept too. I mean, again, and this is absolutely not to knock Walking Dead whatsoever. I have lived long enough. I never knock things that people take popular pleasure out of. But I know from walking through the room when my husband and my daughter are watching that it's a very earth tones kind of palette.
It is.
They're working with there. And so to take this world of Porthampton Abbey, which is where the Clark family lives in my book, with all of these colorful, gorgeous silks and satins and velvets and the architecture that people have, where everything is so vibrant, and have the zombies be in that world, for me is very interesting as a writer,
Totally. Well, I mean, and you do this so well, but it's really, it's all in the details. So, and it helps what you can see and what, as a writer, you show your reader. It really, it's pieces of the world, but it's pieces of the world through the character, what's important in their environment. And it's just, it can come together in a way that, really paints a picture or doesn't. So it's on my mind right now. I'm in a stage of a project where I am at that detail stage. So the major edits are done, the rewrite is happened, and now I'm thinking about how all the details match up. All these little things, does eye color, and it's high fantasy. So it's like, okay, these things, is it really showing the world? And I keep coming back to the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And how they are moving around in their environment. And that's the part of the world that I need to focus on.
Yes. Obviously world building is very important in something like that, as it is in historical fiction, zombies or no zombies. But I find that less is more sometimes. So I trust my readers if I kind of start them out and I set up, certain kind of clothing or certain kind of a palette or whatever. In a way, if they've bought into the vision, they're going to start seeing that in the work, whether I'm doing it with every scene or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
The one thing I try to stand is what I think of as stop action storytelling, which is as soon as you enter a room, the writer tells you everything and what we're all wearing and how their hair was that way. And unless it's in some way tellingly different, I'm going to trust my readers to remember enough of what we had before that they're kind of carrying that spirit of things through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that, and also giving them enough to picture something, but leaving enough out that they can put their own details.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Chuck Wendig. He was talking about he has this writing blog, and he was talking about description and how when the Betty Crocker mixes came out, the first time they came out, you didn't even need an egg. It was everything in a box. And they weren't that popular. And then they took out the egg and suddenly became, something that was in so many kitchens. So he says, like, as, when speaking about description, he says, remember to leave out the egg.
That's very good advice. Of course, you don't want to leave out so much that there's nothing left in the box, because I know that one problem that I sometimes have when I write contemporary is I do what I call trusting the reader too much, to the point where once, this is several years ago, but on one of my comedic adult novels, I remember the editor at the publishing company saying to me, Lauren, people might actually want to know what these characters look like. So I guess you can go too far in the other direction.
Oh, totally. Well, it's funny because you don't always, like, I had a character and I got feedback with the only thing they knew that she appearance-wise was that she had red hair. And I was like, I can't believe that, like, I didn't explain her.
Right. But, and you know what? But sometimes you don't have to. And sometimes just enough of a thumbnail to give readers something to hang on to is enough. I mean, I wouldn't say that it's always necessarily deliberate. And obviously with Zombie Abbey, I wanted all of my characters to look a certain way. And certainly I think that visualization helps readers in the beginning, when there's so many characters, differentiate them.
Yes.
It becomes a shorthand. That said, that I've done YA books before where I've only given my main characters vague descriptions because maybe they're first person present tense, and some of the appeal of that genre sometimes relies on the reader being able to imprint themselves to the character as if they're taking the journey too.
Definitely. That's why first person perspective, I feel like, is just so popular with YA.
Yes, it is. I think it was really the area where present tense first began to shine. I mean, now you see it all over the place in adult fiction as well. But you didn't up until, X amount of years ago. It really was a very much a YA thing. And I always picture it as that first person present tense. It's like I've kind of like grabbed you. And I've literally physically grabbed you and said, come along with me. We're taking this journey together.
Definitely. I love that. In general, I mean, it's first person, third person. It's, are you taking your reader along?
Yes. And I mean, Zombie Abbey, by virtue of what I wanted to do with it, is one of the few novels that I have written in third person because I didn't want to limit what the reader could see with me.
Oh, totally. No, that is the definite. I mean, it makes sense to write that third person. That works. And your narrative tone is, I love it. I love, and the way that there's a couple of, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but when you have, your large amount of characters with the dialogue and the aesthetic, it works so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the dialogue is so important to fiction. Probably the biggest challenge of my career in that regard was several years ago when my daughter was young. She, my husband, and I created a series called the Sisters 8 series for young readers, ages 6 to 10, which has since sold over 250,000 copies. And the stars of that book are octuplets. And they're born 8 girls who are born a minute apart from one another. And there are scenes where each one of them is talking. And the challenge there, 8 girls, all the same age, and they look a lot alike too, was making each voice so distinctive that once the readers got to know them, their voice is kind of like, I think of it like a blueprint, a fingerprint, such that if you didn't see the dialogue tag, you'd still know which character is speaking by what was said. And that's what you try to do with a large campus book like Zombie Abbey. People should be able to tell whether they see the dialogue or not, whether it's haughty Kate or eager Lizzie or scrappy Fanny, the kitchen maid who's talking. They should be able to tell even between people of similar stations, like the stable boy and the footman, which one is talking by the tone and the content of what's said.
Totally. Yeah, that's the big goal. So if you take all the dialogues away, you know who you know everyone who's talking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lauren, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Where can you find me? You can find me at Baratz-Logsted.com, all run together, no hyphen there, or at Twitter, Lauren Baratz L. And I'm on Twitter a lot. I am political a lot on Twitter, so if that is not something that you like, that might not be the best place for you to look for me.
Oh, awesome. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so much fun talking to you.
Thank you for having me, Jayme. I had a really good time, and best of luck with your book.
Thank you, and good luck with your release and all your projects.
Thank you so much.
And that wraps it up this week. Thanks so much for sharing the time with me. Join the conversation at Me Bedingfield and at Too Many Words Pod on both Twitter and Facebook. You can follow me on Instagram at Jayme the Scribbler. And of course, go to the site, tmwpod.com and patreon.com/too many words and pledge your support to the show and keep this boat floating. And you like what I'm doing here? Go to wherever you listen and leave a review and tell your friends. I will talk to you next week with Carrie Luna. Good luck writing, breathe through edits, happy reading. Be kind. Until then, over and out.